There is a nickname for this. Maybe. But, oh, look, this don't work.
Yeah.
All right. If you want to be our Vanna White, that would be awesome. Thank you. So, it happens between 1829 and 1831. It's a U.S. scandal involving members of President Jackson's cabinet and their wives. So, I do feel like before I really start this, I should say as a point of disclosure, I as a historian am not a fan of Andrew Jackson. He's not President Andrew Jackson. General Andrew Jackson, a little bit different. And I also realize that some of you think you're going to leave high school and all this stuff about popular kids and, you know, being on the out and all of that. Do you know what Mr.
No.
Covers? Did you read the sign? Right. Yes. It's been very popular. So anyways, like I think today I'm going to crush all hope that that actually goes away in adulthood. So if you go ahead and click it, let's start with our main character here. Sure. The idea of, you know, being popular and cliques and all that going away after high school, that can go away.
Oh no.
So, this is Peggy O'Neill Eaton Timberlake. Peggy O'Neill was known as an amazingly incredible and beautiful and intelligent and funny young lady. Her father actually ran a boarding house, and many of the congressmen were his clients. And so there's two different historical interpretations of Peggy O'Neill. One was that she was overly friendly with males, particularly wealthy males that were a bit too old for her. And the other interpretation was that she wasn't overly friendly with males, it's just that she was willing to express her opinion whether males agreed to it or not. But either of those things in the early 19th century would have you labeled as a slut in today's terms. So go ahead and click it. So, the other main character in the story for now is Senator and Secretary John Eaton. So Peggy gets married. She ends up marrying a dude in the Navy who is well liked in D.C. He's funny, he's charming, he has lots of friends. And they end up running a boarding house. And so most congressmen and senators back in the day didn't own houses in the D.C. area. They came in and they rented rooms. And one of the guys who rented a room from Peggy was Senator John Eaton. He was also Secretary of the Navy. He was well known in the D.C. area. He was married, and unfortunately for him, his wife died at a fairly early age. And so, go ahead and click it. Timberlake, I'm sorry, was Peggy Eaton's name when that's who she married. So, the senator agrees to pay off Timberlake's debts, can't speak, and he arranges a pension for him in the Mediterranean in the Navy. So, go ahead and click it. So that starts whispering. Timberlake himself was handsome, friendly, in debt, and an alcoholic. In a time when everyone drank huge amounts of alcohol. Average alcohol consumption a day was 2.5 gallons. Now, it wasn't necessarily high content of alcohol, but still, the water wasn't safe to drink. So that's what people drank. So go ahead and click it. So he marries Peggy. In 1828, he dies of pneumonia on a ship in the Mediterranean or on the way. So if you go ahead and click it. However, it goes around D.C. that Timberlake killed himself. Why would it go around? What's the rumor? Why is it going around Timberlake killed himself? For what reason would he have to kill himself? a depressed alcoholic, but yes, but that's not what rumor's going to say yes.
He was having an affair with the other guy.
Yeah, he paid off their debt and sent him to the Mediterranean to get rid of him so that he could have Peggy Eaton. That is what the rumor is in D.C. Go ahead. And then, more than a year after he left, Peggy has a miscarriage. Again, rumor. But why is the more than a year after he left important? Yes?
It can't be his baby if he's been gone.
I can't
for
be
more than 9
Timberlake's
months.
baby. So rumor has it he's killed himself. Why has he killed himself? Because she's had a miscarriage when it couldn't possibly be his child. So whose child is it? Oh, they know whose child it is, according to rumor. It's Senator Eaton. Go ahead and click it. Eaton is the baby's daddy. Ah. Please understand that most of this is actually not true. And we don't know if any of it's true. Go ahead and click
That's
it.
why it's a rumor.
Mm-hmm. After Timberlake's death, their friend Andrew Jackson encourages Eaton and Peggy to marry. He was friends with both of them. He was friends with Peggy Eaton and Peggy Eaton's husband. He was friends with Andrew Jackson. With Senator Eaton, and he's like, you guys should get married. Why live alone? Why have that sort of loneliness when you could just marry each other? So, guess what they do?
Ready, get married.
Guesses? Yes? Go ahead. They get married. Then, this woman, Fluoride Calhoun, that is not a misspelling. Her name was Fluoride. Of course, fortunately for all, she went by Flo. Guess who her husband is? The Vice President of the United States of America. Yeah, oh no. Sadly, no. No one's thinking about the Republic at this time. Go ahead and click it. Flora Calhoun was the wife of the Vice President. And so she's a very important person. And she basically tells the other women, the other wives, to diss Peggy Eaton. So the way it worked in the day is you went out and you visited each other because there's no radio or TV, no music to be heard unless it's live. And everyone who had any money had little cards made up with your picture on it, and you would go visit, and if they weren't there, you would leave your card so they know that you had visited. And therefore, what were you required to do?
Visit back.
Hey, you were supposed to return the visit and go visit them. Well, Flo Calhoun is like, don't go visit her. In essence, this is 19th century version of ghosting. All right? We're just not going to, we're going to pretend like she don't exist. You do understand these are adults, all right, that are doing this. So go ahead and click it. They also don't invite her to parties. Then there's Emily Donaldson. So Andrew Jackson, who I could say many horrible things about, but he loved his wife, and he was actually a pretty good husband, and he was devastated when she died. He, in fact, blamed his political opponents for her death because he said that all the stories about her still being married to another man when she married him is what drove her to her grave. He overlooks the fact that they were true, but that's a whole nother story. So when he becomes president, he needs a first lady. He needs someone to officially host White House events. And so he asks Emily Donaldson to come and do so, and she is the president's niece. And she decides she don't like Peggy.
Uh-oh.
She sides with Flo. Because Flo's like, hey, if you're Peggy's friend, you can't be my friend. Sound like middle school?
Sounds like
Yeah.
Sounds
Oh,
like
no.
elementary school.
Yes.
So
Sounds like Mean Girls.
Alright. And Jackson gets mad at her and fires her. Sends her back home. Uncle Andy's like, why are you being mean to Peggy Eaton? She's my friend. So go ahead and click. Go ahead. So now Jackson and Calhoun get into an argument over tariffs. Right? And Andy takes everything personally, does Andrew Jackson. So go ahead and click it. So Jackson has a meeting. And in this meeting, what had happened actually is he had a dinner, and he was talking to Peggy Eaton, and Peggy Eaton's like, they're all being mean to me. They're all like they're not inviting me to parties, they're not returning my visits, they're not coming down to see me when I visit. And he's like, okay. So in the cabinet meeting, the President of the United States sits down and tells the cabinet, you will go home and tell your wives to be nice to Mrs. Eaton. And the husbands say, will do. And they go home and they tell their wives, be nice to Peggy Eaton. And their wives' response went along the line of, oh, why are you taking her side? You know she's nothing but what was the term? I can't remember the 19th century term that would take the place of hoe, right? She's nothing but a hoe who calls her a good husband to kill himself because she was having an affair with that beast, Senator Eaton. Like, that was their response. And so they were like, hey, go back and tell the president, we're not being nice to her. We're not inviting her to parties. It's not happening. And so they're not nice to Peggy Eaton. So then guess what happened? Go ahead. So Eaton gets mad and he challenges everybody to a duel. And then when they don't accept his duel, he's like, I'm going to kill the Attorney General of the United States. Like, I'm going to kill him. Like, this is the sitting Secretary of the Navy, a former senator, going, I'm going to kill another cabinet member. Go ahead. Jackson fires his cabinet because their wives aren't being nice to Peggy Eaton. He then gives Eaton a new job, which requires the Eatons to leave D.C. And he puts political pressure on all the others, and the others resign, including the Vice President of the United States. Now, there were other things going on, but an important factor in all of this is, in fact, the fact that they're being mean to the president's friend. Go ahead. So, Martin Van Buren ends up becoming vice president because he has no wife. He's a widower, and so when the president says, be nice to Peggy Eaton, he's like, okay, hi. Now, he has no real social events. There's not much he can do. So, he avoids the entire controversy, and Jackson selects him to be vice president. And therefore, when Jackson can no longer be president, or will not any longer be president, guess who he supports for the presidency? So we actually end up getting a president largely out of the fact that he survives a 6th grade girl scandal of, if you're my friend, if you can't be her friend thing. Go ahead and click. President Van Buren goes handsome sideways. Go ahead. That should be bitter, not better. This is a gift from one of my A-Push students. And he tries to start a Southern Revolution, which later happens like 20 years later and becomes the American Civil War. Go ahead and click it. That's the whole event. So that was the Petticoat affair, right? The fact that they're being mean to this woman, and that leads to the downfall of the cabinet. But just to go on with her life. So Eaton dies, and she eventually is going to marry this Antonio Gabriella Bucciani, who is an Italian musician and dancing master. She was 59, he was 25 or 26. All right, go ahead and click it. In 1866, so 7 years later, he takes her fortune and runs off with her granddaughter, who's 17. And they go to Italy. And so she is having an affair with her step-grandfather. Oh, wait, she marries her step-grandfather after stealing all of her grandmother's money. These are some lovely people. Go ahead.
Their family tree must look really weird.
So she dies pretty old age. She's pretty bitter in the end, but much more so over the whole granddaughter thing. She'd actually met this guy because she had hired him to be her granddaughter's, plural, dance instructor. And that's where that goes. All right, I'm done unless you have questions.
Any question?
Yes.
So when, what's that? I'm just gonna, yeah, Margaret Eaton, when she married this guy, was this in the States?
Yeah.
Okay. So
She marries him in Washington, D.C. It's a fairly big deal. Margaret was Peggy Eaton's actual name. Peggy was like her nickname. So they get married, and it's not a huge affair, but it's a pretty grand affair. And of course, it was another scandal because he's 26 and she's 59. If it had been the other way, it would have been a scandal. People would have hardly noticed. Like, one of the creepiest and weirdest thing from this time period, Jefferson Davis marries, right? And he's about 20 years older than her, and she dies within a year of their marriage. And so then he proposes to her sister, her little sister, who's like 20, it's like 4 or 5 years younger than her, and he marries her, and they go off to Mississippi, where she too gets malaria and is dead in 3 years. So guess what he does?
Nice.
Yeah, there's another sister who's about 12 years younger, so she's about 30 years younger than him. He marries her. She outlived them all by a length of time. There is a sad story here. They had children, like he was 60 and he had like toddlers, which is, a whole nother kind of weirdness. But during the Civil War, the White House of the Confederacy is still there. You can see it. You can see the window. Their 3 or 4 year old son got excited and went running down the hallway and actually ran out the window and fell to his death, like 2.5 stories down, right in the middle of the war. So there is that. And then the horror of horrors is his daughter married a Union officer some 10 years after the war. And people in the South were like threatening to kill him, the officer, and calling Jefferson Davis a traitor and all of this stuff. There's all kinds of interesting things. But yeah, the whole, popular thing, you can't be my friend if you're her friend, yeah, sadly that doesn't always go away. It gets better. Any other questions?
All right.